Welcome back. Well, you heard the comments there by Norman about the situation regarding early childhood development. This is the first year that all of the government early education centres, or creches, are being run by the Department of Basic Education, moved from the Department of Social Development last year. But there have been huge issues with these centres. They educate millions of young children around the country. Professor Eric Atmore is the director at the Centre for Early Childhood Development. He joins us now. Professor, good afternoon to you. All of the research tells us that the early phase, this very early phase of a child's life, is the most important, really sets them on the road. Is our government taking this phase of children, of their education, seriously enough?
Stephen, you are dead right. You know, that early phase is so important. From conception through the birthing process, the parental relationships, that's so important in the early development of children. But I'm afraid that the government, as with many previous governments over decades, is not giving it anywhere near the priority that it needs.
The fact that this sector is now going to be administered by the Department of Basic Education, how important is that? Will it make a difference?
I think it's very important. You know, this is not a new idea. We made this proposal as part of the early policy proposals when the ANC was the government in waiting. So it's been around for years. And in most countries, early childhood development falls under the education authorities. I think it's going to make a huge difference. And the biggest difference will be around the educational component. Really, the Department of Social Development were out of their depth. Their prime mandate is child protection, child neglect, combating child abuse. They had very little interest or competence in the education side. So I'm very hopeful, and my colleagues around the country are very hopeful that education will do a much better job.
What needs to happen? What will make a big difference in this sector? I mean, what can government do? There'll be some limits to what government can do, but what would make a difference?
Look, there are lots of things that will make a difference, but the overriding factor for me is the need for the political will to work in the interest of children. You know, we can put more books into the early childhood development sector. We can put more educational equipment. But until such time as there's the political willingness of the president to take responsibility for early childhood development in his presidency, we're not going to get very far. I think some of the problems relate to infrastructure. Many early childhood centers operate in wooden iron structures, no ventilation, too many children, no learning program, untrained teachers, a watery, soupy meal rather than a nutritious meal. So there are many complications, but the biggest one is if we had the political will and we provided the budget, then we can act in the interests of our young children.
Is it partly because we all know matrics, we all know teenagers, if they are treated badly, they will shout and scream themselves or tell their parents who will shout and scream. Very young children have literally no voice in our democracy.
They have absolutely no voice, and it is very seldom that the teachers of these young children will either strike or toy or protest. You know, their primary responsibility is caring for young children. And around the country, we've got just on 200,000 of these predominantly women. They do a phenomenal job given their lack of resources and the lack of interest in or from government officials and from government at the highest level. These are the people who are building the country. So we've got the person power. We need the resources to enable them to do their best that they can.
If we get this right, if we get this phase of a child's life right, educationally, caring for them, etc., what happens in later life? And what happens to their chances of staying in school all the way through to matric?
If we get it right at the early years stage, those children enter school more confident and more competent. They perform better academically. They are less likely to get involved in crime and substance abuse. They move through the education system, they will matriculate, they will get jobs, and they will be productive citizens. Now, this is not some activist in Cape Town saying this. This is global research which tells us this. So, James Heckman, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics in the early 2000s, he said, as a world-renowned economist, the greatest investment we can make in society is in the early development of young children. So it's there. All we need to do now is to do it.
We talk about youth unemployment all the time. We talk about the fact that there's so many young people who can't get an income for themselves. So there would be a link, right? If we get early education, early childhood development right, people stay in school longer, people have a much better chance of working later. It would literally change our country.
It would certainly change our country, and it's happened around the world. You know, in those countries where the president has taken the lead, and I think of Chile, I think of Jamaica, I think of New Zealand, where the head of state has taken the lead through public announcements and through support and being a champion for young children. We've seen the system thrive, and we've seen all the benefits that you've just mentioned. If we invest in those early years, we will reap the benefits down the line, and it'll change our society, yes.
Professor Eric Atmore, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate it. Director of the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Really do appreciate the time.